to be fair, this is actually...
I was being fair.
No, this is a huge Democratic Party problem. If you look at Democratic cities, they are terribly run. They have incredibly high taxes. It is impossible to build, so the cost of housing... Let me finish. I'll give you a chance. The cost of housing is crazy in places like New York and Chicago. If you look at Democratic...
Bill Maher doesn't pull punches, especially when it comes to criticizing left-wing guests on Real Time with Bill Maher. He dives straight into a fiercely contentious debate about Democratic leadership in major American cities like New York and Chicago, where the stakes couldn't be higher. The episode gets particularly intense, with heavy criticism flying and the issue of rising gun violence front and center. One of Maher's guests, a prominent CNN host, joins the fray, and he's just as blunt, holding nothing back.
Maureen Zakaria and the former mayor of Chicago and former ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, and chief of staff, weren't you? You don't think that's a more impressive credit than those other two? Chief of staff of the White House? I feel like that is the biggest job you can have in this country behind the president. Isn't that the gatekeeper of everything, the chief of staff?
It is the gatekeeper, but the biggest job is mayor.
Of Chicago.
Yeah. And then chief of staff is the worst job until you get through it and then you look back fondly on it. But going through it is
They don't last long. I mean, like, it's so intense, right, that you can only do it for like...
18 to 19 months is the modern average.
Right.
Yeah. Not that I figured that out,
but with
I want you to
ambassador,
know that.
But with ambassador, you get called the honorable ambassador for the...
Yeah,
so you probably get better restaurant reservations with that.
So sensitive, don't you think? Yeah, you do. And it's Your Excellency from now on to you. I'm with your Senate confirmation.
All right, this is from the people. What do you think about Trump's proposed $5 million gold card visa for wealthy foreigners? Is it smart economic move or a problematic policy?
In essence, he forces people to confront and acknowledge the glaring shortcomings in many Democrat-led cities.
We have the worst reading scores for 8th graders in 30 years. And nobody, not a governor, not a mayor, not a president, not a secretary of education is talking about it. We're all wrapped up. Look, in 7th grade, if I known that I could have said the word they got in the girls' bathroom, I would have done it. We literally are a superpower. We're facing off against China with 1.4 billion people, and 2/3 of our children can't read 8th grade level. So no more about the lot. Wait a second, I'm on a roll for a second.
I gave him the light.
I don't want to hear another word about the classroom. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom until you tell me.
The city leadership is responsible for managing taxes, but they also have to face the harsh realities of declining education standards and growing safety concerns. The school system in particular is falling short. It's just not meeting the needs of the people. And let's be honest, they can't avoid these issues anymore. Everything is out in the open.
He said, you know, you get the green card, but with this, the gold card, you get extra privileges. Like what? You got to vote twice? Or what?
Well, now you're speaking Chicago language. I'm for it, but it's part of a bigger package on immigration reform. It's been 42 years since the last one, so I'm not against it, but it's part of a whole package.
I read that the current mayor of Chicago has an approval rating of 6.6%.
Round it up, 7.
I mean, you were just the ambassador to Japan. If that was your approval rating in Japan, they would do harakiri on live TV.
They would do it at 27.
I mean, what's going on in Chicago?
Look, I mean, we were talking about this a little earlier. I mean, you have also the mayor of New York not doing well. Obviously, other things also here in Los Angeles not doing well. The mayor here. Look, and then you got mayors like the mayor of San Francisco and other cities that are doing well. So I would say, look, there is a general rule. I had this when I was mayor. Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances. Focus on those 3 things and your city's going to be fine. We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster. Yeah. And I'll say this about our schools. I don't want to hear another word about the locker room. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom.
I agree.
The tension practically jumps off the screen as Maher dives into explosive exchanges. If you appreciate content that's raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically honest, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'll be right here when you get back. Shout out from the crew. Now let's get into it. Once the stage is set, Real Time with Bill Maher becomes a pressure cooker for exposing the cracks in Democratic leadership. Even the more liberal-leaning guests can't ignore the glaring contradictions in these cities. Take New York and Chicago. Despite having some of the highest taxes in the world, what real benefits are citizens actually seeing in return?
Classroom.
I couldn't agree more.
But I think, to be fair, this is actually...
I was being fair.
No, this is a huge Democratic Party problem. If you look at Democratic cities, they are terribly run. They have incredibly high taxes. It is impossible to build, so the cost of housing... Let me finish. I give you a chance. The cost of housing is crazy in places like New York and Chicago. If you look at Democratic states, you go to look at New York versus Florida, okay? Roughly the same population. The budget of New York State is twice that of Florida. What do they have? Streets paved with gold? I live in New York. I pay the highest taxes in New York. You get nothing for it. And I think that is the image people have of the Democratic Party.
Sure.
Lots of taxes, lots of regulation, but nothing gets done.
Hey,
and I think
I live in L.A.
Right.
Tax dollars are under scrutiny, and for good reason. The return on that investment? Not much. Maher kicks off the conversation without a hint of apology, simply asking, how's that been working out?
I think, the Democrats have to own this and realize the answer to everything is not more taxes, more regulation. People are fed up of that, and they feel that it isn't working.
The Democrats, look, as somebody who produced the best graduation growth in the country, I need for high school.
You were a good mayor.
No,
I agree.
No, that's not the point. The point was we changed, but I'll take that. The point isn't the rules. The point is the results. And the party has gotten way too focused on what the rules are. And I do agree with you on this. We have made it impossible to function as a city or as a state, and been so. Take an example of this example here obviously in LA. It took a fire and a natural disaster to make you realize, you know what, that rule's not that important. In Pennsylvania, a bridge collapsed. All of a sudden we go, oh, that environmental rule's just not important. We got to build a bridge. It's much more important. And I think the Democratic Party should take a look at it and say, we're going to be honest, like we did in 1994 with reinventing government. Everything is on the table. Nothing is safe. And we're just going to look at it and say, that's essential. Those two things get out of here. And that doesn't happen. And that's a fair criticism.
Maybe this is your next Democratic vice presidential candidate. Maybe presidential candidate. And by the way, he's also, that counts as handicap. You can slip him by.
This gets you handicap parking right here.
The question inevitably comes up. Where exactly? Are all these tax dollars going? Maher doesn't let it slide. He presses his guests and the conversation gets uncomfortably raw, so much so that it becomes genuinely compelling. What surfaces is a clear picture of government inefficiency plaguing many of these Democratic-run cities. One guest, the former mayor of Chicago, whose leadership was under fire during the city's education crisis, leans on his past accomplishments in an attempt to deflect. It's as if he's saying, look, we've done some good too. But Maher doesn't back down. He zeroes in, asking point blank, what's actually being done to fix the mess now? From there, the discussion shifts to the education system, and it's not pretty. Public schools are struggling, and it's impossible to ignore. Education, the supposed foundation of a thriving society, is failing, and failing badly, in many of these Democratic strongholds.